Good morning, and welcome to the Audit and Finance Standing Committee meeting of February 18th, 2025. I'm Kathy Daigle-Gammon, Chair of Audit and Finance, and with District. The mic goes on and off. I know. Okay, I'll watch. Our clerk today is Dorothy Maponga. Our legal counsel is Karen McDonald. Finance is Jerry Blackwood. So we'll call the meeting to order and do the land acknowledgement that the Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and the traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. Now we get to the agenda. Approval of the minutes of January 15th, 2025. Councillor Cleary, seconder. Councillor St. Amand, thank you very much. All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. Opposed, nay. The motion is carried. Approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions. Dorothy, do we have any additions or deletions?
No additions or deletions have been received by the clerk's office.
Thank you. So may I have a motion to approve that order of business? Councillor Morse, Councillor Cleary for the second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye or raise your hand. Opposed, nay. The motion is carried. Business rising out of the minutes, there are none. Of conflict of interest. Seeing none. Motions of rescission, there are none. Motions of reconsideration, there are none. Consideration of deferred business, there is none. Notions of tabled matters, there is none. Correspondence, petitions, and delegations. Dorothy, do we have any of the three?
No correspondence or petitions has been received by the clerk's office.
Thank you. And presentations, we have none. Now we have public participation. As of 4:30 yesterday, no one had signed up, but we can ask the gallery if there is anyone that would like to speak. Second time, anyone that would like to speak. Third and final time, anyone that would like to speak, and there are none. Information items brought forward, there is none. And now we go to our reports. 13.1.1, which is a 24-25 write-off of uncollectible accounts. We have no presentation, but we do have our staff here. Vicki Robertson, Director of Revenue, and our Treasurer, and Caitlin Gilbert, Supervisor, to answer any questions that may come up. So, members of council, would someone, or if Audit Committee, would you like to put the motion on the floor? Anyone at all? Councillor St. Amand, thank you.
There we go. That the Audit and Finance Standing Committee forward the staff report dated January 10th, 2025 to Halifax Regional Council for approval and recommend that the Halifax Regional Council approve A, the real property tax accounts in the amount of $20,759.93, comprised of $17,363.85 principal and $3,396.08 interest, as summarized in Schedule 1 of the staff report dated January 10th, 2025, to be formally written out of the books of account. B, the general revenue accounts in the amount of $16,517.67, comprised of $13,298 and 31 cents principal and $3,219.36 interest, as summarized in Schedule 1, be formally written out of the books of account. And C, the recreation accounts in the amount of $2,789.40, comprised of $2,789.40 principal and $0 interest, as summarized in Schedule 1, be formally written out of the books of account.
Seconded by Councillor Cleary, I believe. Thank you. Councillor St. Amand, any comment?
No, I did note that when I went back through the accounts, where was it here? So we're on the real property account. We're writing off almost $21,000 with a balance. It looks like 1.578 million as the ongoing balance within that account. Do we also keep track of any accounts that are at risk within that, or does it only wind up coming up when it is overdue? And how overdue does it have to be in order to get thrown into that category?
Thank you, Councillor St. Amand. Vicki Robertson is here to answer that question.
Thank you. Vicki Robertson, Director of Revenue and Treasurer. Through you, Madam Chair, to the Councillor. If I understand your question, what you're looking for is, are we keeping an eye on sort of at-risk accounts? Mm-hmm. For the property accounts, we have a continuous agent report, and the way that our process works in accordance with AO 18, we are reminding people we have statements after 30 days, and then after 60 days, we have another notice that goes out, and then we start working the phones and so on. So we're constantly working with people who are in arrears, try to get them onto some kind of a payment plan. Mm-hmm. We are always reminding them that they do owe us money. We do keep track of all that. Yep. Once we get to a point where we have exhausted all possibilities, then we go to tax sale with most real property. Mm-hmm. The real property that is being written off here, these are ones where the property itself is in question. So we had an assessment account that had tax attached to it, but the actual property itself is in question. We had a number of these from years back that we're continuing to clean up. So I'm not sure if that completely answers your question.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Vicki. Seeing no other names on the list, we'll call for the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion is carried. 1.2, third quarter 24-25 financial report. And we have Tiffany Smith with us, the Manager of Service Delivery, and Dave Harley, Director of Financial Management, to answer any questions that should come forward. So, Councillor Cleary, to put the motion on the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll move that the Audit and Finance Standing Committee forward the third quarter 2024-25 financial report to Regional Council for their information.
Councillor Moore, second. Thank you. Councillor Cleary.
So just, I guess looking at this, maybe you could just provide the highlights, because when you go through the report, looking at sort of...
Councillor Cleary, I erred. I'm sorry. We do have a presentation. Would you like to see that first?
I definitely would, now that I know
Thank
we have
you.
one.
Thank you. So sorry about that. Dave and Tiffany, please proceed.
All right, so starting off, first we'll highlight our current projected position coming into the end of December, which is a small surplus of 1.6 million. Just as a reminder, last quarter we were projecting a small deficit of around 300,000. So the first two slides, I'm just going to walk you through the most material items that make up the current projected position, and these are items that we would have highlighted last quarter. Numbers might just be slightly different due to changes in the projections. So an increase in interest and investment revenue is 2.1 million. Increase in deed transfer tax is 2 million. Releasing various contingencies, so we did this last quarter to help offset the business unit deficit, was 2 million. Recoveries from insurance claims net of an increase in legal fees is 1.1 million, and then an increase in permit revenue is 1.1 million, and that's volume of permit revenue as our rates are still frozen, and that's primarily building permits, sign encroachments, or street openings and sign encroachments. So we had an unscheduled debt repayment of 4.3 million, increase in compensation and benefits across the organization was 1.7 million, and that's primarily driven by overtime and casual wages. Unbudgeted fencing, rental, site remediation, and other costs associated with encampment sites, 1.6 million. And then increase in building operating and maintenance costs, primarily aging infrastructure, is 1.5 million. So the next slide, this is newer items that we didn't highlight prior quarter, and that's either because they're new projections or have become more material. So an increase in transit revenue is 2.5 million, and that's primarily driven by increase in ridership. Increase in fee revenues in parks and recreation is 2 million, and that's across the board, and again would be volume of fee revenues received as we do build the 2% increase into the budget each year. The biggest drivers there were ice rentals and play camps, and you will see an offset in increased casual wages. Decrease in diesel was 1.9 million, and that's the budget was based on $1.56, and we're trending around $1.33. Increase in various and external services is 1.6 million, and that's pretty broad. So we've got an increase in asphalt work, increase in vegetation management, as well as some security costs and legal fees. Increase in solid waste contract costs is 1.5 million, and that's primarily volume increase. And then an increase in vehicle repair and maintenance costs due to fleet vacancies is 866,000. So the next slide, we're highlighting risks and opportunities. So items that may impact our projections going forward, particularly coming into year end. The first couple we've brought up fairly consistently to this presentation. So the impact of severe weather related events, fluctuations in commodity costs that can also obviously be an opportunity as we see a surplus in our diesel. Staffing and contractor shortages can increase costs or delay projects. And then a couple of newer items, so global trade, particularly around the uncertainty with the context of the US-Canada relationship. So that can lead to potential supply chain disruptions due to tariffs. The more immediate impact that we would probably see would be increase in costs or delay in projects. And then cancellation costs for large in-flight projects. So that can lead to financial penalties, legal disputes, and realization of sunk costs. So next, the councillor funds. So the two of them, the district capital funds, total budget is 3.1 million. 1.9 million has been spent or committed, and that leaves 1.1 million available to the end of the year. For district activity, $72,000 budget, 46.9 thousand has been spent or committed, leaving 25.1 thousand available. And just to note that the spent or committed amounts have actually decreased from last quarter, and that's just due to prorated amount of the commitments being unavailable to the prior council. So now that the new council is in place, those commitments have been released. So the actuals have actually increased since last quarter, but the commitments, because they've been released, have come down. So for recreation area rates, there's 22 of these, and the carry forward balance in the accounts at the beginning of the year was 1.2 million. Revenues earned to the end of December was 1.1 million. Expenses realized to the end of December, 1.2 million, and that leaves a carry forward at December 31st of 963,000. Next, an update on our reserve balances. So the opening balance at December 31st for total reserves is 431 million. Our projected closing balance at the end of this fiscal year is 331 million, and then our projected uncommitted balance at the end of fiscal 27-28 is down to just under 54 million. Next, our aged accounts receivable. So the total gross accounts receivable at December 31st is 87 million. And obviously that's come down quite a bit from prior quarter. Again, that was due to timing, as the tax bills prior quarter would have been issued but not yet due, and the majority of those have now been paid. Next up, capital projection summary. So the net budget available before expenditures at December 31st was 770 million. Total spent to the end of December was just under 300 million. Projected expenditures to the end of the fiscal year are just under 150 million, and then projected work to progress into next fiscal is 304 million. So hospitality expenditures for the 3-month period ended December 31st was only $123. So the details of that are attached in attachment 9. And then for the same period, expenses for reportable individuals was $21,143. And just to note, of course, that would have October expenses from the prior council, and then November and December expenses from the current council. And again, full details are available in attachment 10. And then finally, council approvals. So for the 3-month period ended December 31st, total new operating costs that have been approved outside of the current fiscal budget are $388,000. And then total new reserve withdrawals are $350,000. And full details can be found in attachment 11. And just to note, of course, any in-camera decisions would not be included in that full listing. All right, so that's the end of the presentation this morning, and Dave Harley or myself are available here for any questions that you may have. And Dave did just want to give one update as well on one of the items that we outlined in the risks as well.
Thanks, Tiffany. Dave Harley, Director of Financial Management and Operations. So as Tiffany had called out in our risk and opportunity slide there on slide 4, we do have a risk that we've identified around the cancellation of major projects. So what we've actually seen recently with one of the council decisions was around the Windsor Street Exchange. And I wanted to bring that to this council's attention because there are some implications with that that may impact the numbers that we've actually presented here today. So right now we're sitting at about a $1.6 million surplus for the year. Our year ends on March 31st. What we have with this as well, we have expenditures that were made on this project, which was a debt-funded project. If that project no longer exists, it's no longer eligible for debt funding. So we have to change our funding method for that, for that project. And so we kind of have two options with that. One would be to change it to reserve funding, which we'd need to come back at our March meeting and get a report before this group for an unbudgeted reserve withdrawal to cover that off. The other option is to have that fall to our what we call our capital renewal, which is funded from our operating budget. So that would be an expense that we're going to see potentially coming against this operating budget that would impact that $1.6 million surplus. Right now, our actuals on that project had been in the range of about $4 million. That would more than wipe out that surplus that we're seeing and push us into a deficit position. There's other outstanding costs that may be coming with that. I understand there's going to be a report coming to council to outline what those costs are. I don't have them here, but I can tell you just based on the actuals that we have to date that we've actually spent, if that's no longer eligible for debt funding, we are going to have to change that funding source. So we are going to have to come back with a report to either remove that from our reserves, or it's going to be falling to our bottom line as of March 31st. So that'll push us back out of our surplus position into a deficit position. So in terms of that, timing is kind of critical in terms of getting a final decision on when what we're doing with this project, how it's going to move forward or not. And then we'll be seeing the impact of that as part of our year-end statements and our year-end surplus. So I did want to flag that for this group's attention to make sure that everybody was fully informed of what the implications of that may be. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cleary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I appreciate all the information in the report. And this may or may not be able to be answered by you, but maybe Jerry or someone else. When I look at each of the business units and the savings, the overs, what's clear is vacancies are responsible for a good chunk of the savings so far. So how much of that is active vacancy management and how much of that is just we literally can't hire the people that we're looking for at the moment? And I don't know if it's possible to give a percentage either way or just an anecdotal feeling, but I'm just trying to get a sense of, since we're saving so much money there, is that an active, intentional part of the budget savings from when we projected a larger deficit earlier, or is that just, we're lucky because we didn't hire all the people we were trying to hire?
Through you, Chair to the Councillor. So while I'm not going to say there's no active vacancy management going on, that may be occurring in some of the business units as they look to potentially offset some other deficits they may have within their group. For the most part, we are not taking an active vacancy management strategy. So what we do see is, we've had a lot of positions created in our last budget. We have a lot of positions in this budget. What we do when we do our budget is we kind of take a look at when we think those positions can be hired, But if those positions are not hired by that estimated date, we have an increase in our vacancy management. We call it vacancy management. It's more just vacancy savings, more so than vacancy management. So we do see that across the organization. One thing I will say is, there's a lot of growth going on within this organization. Some of the hiring markets have been challenging for us to find and fill positions. So we've seen that in positions like mechanics, and some of our planning and design positions have been difficult to fill. So those can naturally, despite the best efforts of people in our HR group and in those business units, they can naturally cause an increase in those vacancy savings that we see. And, we're actively trying to fill those positions, but it's been a struggle, and that's, I think, a bigger cause of what's driving that vacancy management.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor Cleary. Councillor Hensby.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. In regards to the unscheduled debt repayment, normally debt payments are very structured and stuff. I'm curious when you say unscheduled. Are we taking advantage of some interest rates and retiring some debt earlier than normal and paying, or are we paying a penalty on that early repayment? And is the penalty less than the savings were occurring?
Through the chair to the councillor. So we took advantage of, we were in a surplus situation at the time, and saved about $500,000 in interest payments in order to, or rather in interest expense in order to repay, rather than refinancing it at a higher interest rate.
And with the interest rates as they currently are we anticipating any more debt recovery?
Through you, Chair. No, we're not expecting any at this point in time. So we took advantage at this point. This was a balloon payment that was coming due for refinancing, so we made the decision not to refinance at the much higher interest rate. What we have done is, with our new debt strategy, our new debt policy, and what we're able to do with our debt is take longer term debt than we were ever able to do in the past. So previously we were only able to take 10-year debt. Now we can take it out to 20 years, but we do actually have a negotiated ability to do early retirement. So that may be something that we look at down the road once we get a better sense of what the interest rates are doing, and if we have any advantage to doing so. So that is an option that we have available to us now, which wasn't previously available to us. We didn't have an early retirement option. We only had the ability with this one because it was a balloon payment that needed to be refinanced.
And currently our debt load is what, 5% of our budget?
I'd have to go back and get that number. I think it's somewhere in that range for our debt servicing costs. Yes.
The province will allow us up to 15%. Is that correct?
I believe it's 10 to 15%. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hensby. Councillor Morse.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering if you could say a little bit more about under the risks category, what risks you foresee with the staffing shortages, and also how many vacancies are there in finance and audit?
Through you, Chair. So the risk around staff shortages, it's actually a bit of a risk and a bit of an opportunity. So as we kind of talked about before, we do have some cost savings as a result of vacancies, which will help our bottom line. The risks that are there are around our ability to actually deliver our services and deliver on our capital projects. So what we've, looking at our capital plan for the last several years, you'll notice we've had significant carry forward in that plan due to some struggles being able to deliver the entirety of that capital plan in each year. So if we have staff shortages and those continue, that can continue to be an issue in different areas. In terms of vacancies in finance, I don't know, Jerry, if you have a solid number.
Do you, just to clarify, do you mean in the finance business unit?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we have around.
Sorry, finance and asset management.
Yeah, finance and asset management. Yeah, so I get a report every month from HR, and the most recent one, we had, I think it was around 13 vacancies, and we had 7 or 8 active requisitions. So of those 13, 8 were in flight. So that's on, I think our total FTE count is about 230, something like that.
Okay, and so do we know how many vacancies over the whole organization?
I think in the organization there's about 400.
400 vacancies.
400 vacancies across the whole organization.
And of those, which ones would be the most problematic in terms of us meeting our capital plan?
I think it depends on which part of the capital plan you're looking at. So if we're short designers and planners, that can have impacts on some of our long-range infrastructure planning. Anything from project managers to that. The other thing to remember about those vacancies is, we're saying 400 today. It might not be the same 400 in a month because we may have had some come in, we may have had some come out. So it's always kind of a fluctuation. So it's hard for me to sit here and say which, if there'd be any specific projects. I don't know, Jerry, if you have any more insight into where some of those vacancies are kind of lying within the organization.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think overall, like on those vacancies, I think there's probably about 60% of those are like there's an active requisition in terms of a recruitment on those. One of the things with vacancies is is trying to figure out, you're always going to have a bit of a structural vacancy, we call it, with respect to churn. And even like we found in finance, right, we're sort of a smaller business unit. But if you, for example, go out to hire a finance business partner, somebody from our accounting group could move up into that position, right, because they're doing their CPA. And then you fill one vacancy, but you created another vacancy. So it's a little bit of a game. When you look at it, it has a lot of moving parts.
Yeah. It
Especially
just seems...
when you fill a position internally, because it fills one, but then it creates another vacancy. And the other thing is, you need to look at is people who might be on WCB or LTD. They would technically that would be a vacant position, but we still have to hold that position for somebody that's their like home position. So if a firefighter or a police officer was on long-term disability or WCB, that position is technically vacant because they're paid by another funding source, but it's still a position. So that would be within, like the 400 vacancies in the organization.
Okay, thank you. It just seems that's roughly 10% of our HRM workforce, so that seems like a pretty high vacancy rate. But anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morse. Councillor Gillis?
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I just have a question around the fencing rental. I'm not sure if that would go to you guys or maybe Parks and Rec, but can you elaborate more on the cost of this? 1.6 million total, but I believe the fencing was somewhere around 900,000. Do we have a breakdown of where all that money went for the fence rental?
Through the chair to the councillor. So that total is actually a combination of fencing rental, but then also site remediation. Like there's a couple costs in there. I don't have the specific breakdown in front of me now, but I can definitely bring that back in terms of how that breaks down between the various costs.
Okay, it seems like a high number from November to January for $900,000 for fence rental. And I was just wanted to know if anybody knew why that was so high. But okay, thank you. Appreciate
it. Yeah. Thank you. I think a lot of that fencing relates, and the remediation costs are with respect to some of the encampment enclosures that happened over that period of time. I know Victoria Park, I believe, was one that had some high cost remediation costs, and then it had to be fenced off. But we can certainly get the breakdown and provide it, email it out to the committee on the breakdown of fencing and remediation for the different sites.
Thank you, Councillor Gillis. Councillor St. Amand?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As Councillor Morse noted, the percentage of vacancies relative to the overall size of the municipal workforce is relatively large. It's certainly significant. I'm wondering if we're also seeing any related issues, whether it's across the municipality or within individual business units, that such vacancies may have an unintended impact on our ability to deliver service.
Through you, Chair. So I would say I think anytime we have vacancies, it does impact our ability to deliver service. To what extent it can be difficult to say. Like, I'll just speak strictly from the finance perspective. I mean, I've got a team that's got a few vacancies right now. We're relying on the rest of our team to kind of help out and step up and take on some additional work that maybe they wouldn't be normally doing on a regular time. So you run into issues like that where you have issues around, are you overtaxing your staff? Are they're reaching a burnout point? You want to be careful of those things because those will definitely impact your service over time.
Right.
A short-term vacancy may or may not be able to do it. So it's going to be kind of dependent on where those vacancies lie. The ability to provide some cover off on those. Are you able to fill it with a term position? Are you able to fill it with anything at all? Are you just covering it off with overtime or anything like that? So there is definitely a worry about impact to service delivery, but it's hard to quantify what that impact may or may not be, depending on on an organization-wide basis. I think you'd have to look at it on a more specific basis to see if there are actual specific impacts to our service.
That's understandable. I'm curious if we've seen any kind of trend, whether across HRM as a whole or in individual departments. Are the current vacancy numbers concerning in any way? Are they on their way up? Or are they fairly flat?
Those numbers tend to work kind of cyclically throughout the year. So what we'll see is a large spike in our vacancy numbers right after our budget because we've just approved and created a large number of positions that it's going to take some time to fill those positions. So you'll see a spike in our vacancy numbers then, which will trend down throughout the rest of the year.
Right.
I think there's been significant work done by our HR department in the past few years. We've hired some new positions and done a lot of work around recruitment, and I think that's starting to have an impact. So we're starting to see some additional positions that we're cutting down on the amount of time it's taking us to fill some of these positions. There are still definitely struggles with that, and there's also positions that are they're hard to fill structurally. So as Jerry said, we have some of that inherent thing. So if within my group I have a position come up at a higher level, clearly we're looking to do internal promotion to fill that position, which it prolongs the length of the vacancy, but it may not be the same position that's vacant throughout that entire period of time. So we'll see a lot of that as well.
Right. And do we track new positions versus existing positions differently?
In terms of our vacancy reporting, I don't believe that we do break that out too much. I think the information is there, but I don't think we're actually focusing on that so much as we are. When Jerry says that 400 positions are vacant, that number is our most recent number. It's not breaking it down by these ones were just created this year, or these ones were created, previous years, or they've become vacant in the last. Well, we're not necessarily looking at that when that 400 number comes on, but there is work being done behind the scenes to say, these positions they're working on filling these. These may be in flight. There may be job postings have gone out for that type of thing. So it's kind of it's not that it's the work is happening to try and close that gap, I would say.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Jerry's got a comment as well.
Yeah, just to tag on to what Dave was saying. So just on the capital plan, so this week at budget committee, you have the operations group coming forward. So they have probably 95% of all capital that would be within that operations group. So that would be maybe some good questions for there in terms of how hard to fill positions are, can impede delivery on our capital plan. As Dave said, we have done some, HR has hired some new positions, but we just finished, I guess, bit of a performance excellence project with the corporate performance team and HR, which just ended, which kind of looked at vacancies and the hiring process and looking to how can we, streamline, the recruitment process, as well as better reporting on vacancies. Because like I said, we might have 400 vacancies, but I know there's like half of those are active recruitment right now. So then you have to look at, the other, say, 200, right? And within those, how many are LTD or workers' comp and things like that. And are just, it's kind of like, that unemployment number, right? You're always going to have, it's never going to be zero, right? You're always going to have people that are just going between, the position. But yeah, just thought I'd put that out there as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor St. Amand. Councillor Morse.
Thank you. On a different subject, sounds like we might be having some thefts of salt. What was the unbudgeted salt dome security cost, if you could? And why, I noticed revenue is down from tickets. Why are we issuing fewer tickets? Do you know? Thanks.
I'll take the salt dome. Excuse me. So currently we have a project going on with the Macintosh Depot and Turner Drive Depot to put in automated salt scales, which so right now the unbudgeted cost that you see there, that was for the security contract to have a security company at the depots who, it was a manual process, so they would have to manually track the number of people going in and out and take the weights manually. So the salt scales project was supposed to be delivered on time for this year's winter works. It wasn't. So finance and asset management had to take that cost on because we had to have somebody to oversee the scales and to be able to track the salt and the weights.
And why do we need security for this? I'm sorry, I don't quite
So we use
understand.
it as an external contract. So we have a security company because it's seasonal. We don't hire staff for that. So we hire a security company and they basically oversee the salt scales. And as trucks come in, get loaded and weighted, they manually track it and then like key it into a program. So that cost, we took a bit of a risk because that project was supposed to be delivered, ready to go for this year's winter works, and it wasn't. So we had to take that additional cost on. However, I think it's a great project. The overall cost of the project, I think, is $600,000. So the payback of a reduction of $300,000 a year is good, and it's all good continuous improvement. We'll have better reporting and save some money there as well.
Okay, thank you. And on the tickets, I think revenue was down from tickets.
Yeah, so just to note, I don't have the exact numbers, but the budget actually did increase from prior year. So we are actually up over prior year. It's just we haven't quite met the budget and we're expecting to be under the total increase that we've factored in. So we wouldn't actually be down from last year, just down from where we expect it to be. I would say I can either look into getting the more specific numbers for you, or would probably also be a really good question for Public Works when they're here this week.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morse. I see no further questions. Do you have one more?
Thank you. There's a lot of overtime for Halifax Transit, and I'm just wondering if we have any controls on that. I mean, it would be better rather than paying out in overtime if we hired more people, I would think. So is there any kind of control over how much overtime a unit can have? Business unit?
Through you, Chair. No, we don't have any specific controls on a corporate-wide level. There may be some internal work that's done, or it may be governed in some cases by collective agreements. What I would suggest actually is this is another great question to bring forward at the transit budget meeting as they're coming forward with this year or this week.
All right, we have a little rehearsal here today, I guess, for other days. Thank you.
Good point, Councillor Morse. Thank you. Seeing no further questions, call for the question, comments? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Opposed, nay. Motion is carried. Thank you very much, Dave. Thank you, Tiffany. No motions, so we'll now do our in-camera items. Thank you, Councillor Cleary. Was that a motion to go in camera? Okay. Is your mic on? Sorry.
He said motion to go on camera.
Oh, good. Thank you, Councillor Cleary. Thank you, Councillor Morse, for the second. Welcome back. We're on item 15.1.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the Audit and Finance Standing Committee, 1, adopt the recommendations as outlined in the private confidential report dated February 6, 2025, and 2, direct that the private confidential report dated February 6, 2025 be maintained private and confidential.
Councillor Hensby seconded. Question is called. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion is carried. We'll move on to 15.2.
I move that the Audit and Finance Standing Committee, 1, adopt the recommendations as outlined in the private and confidential report dated February 6, 2025, and 2, direct that the private and confidential report dated February 6, 2025 be maintained private and confidential.
Seconded by Councillor Gillis. Call for the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Opposed, nay. Motion is carried. Move on to 15.3. Councillor Morse.
Thank you. I move the Audit and Finance Standing Committee, 1, adopt the recommendations as outlined in the private and confidential report dated February 10th, 2025, and 2, direct that the private and confidential report dated February 10th, 2025 be maintained private and confidential.
Councillor Hensby, I believe I heard, but call for the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Raising your hand. Opposed, nay. The motion is carried. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to item 16, added items, of which there were none. This is of motion. None. So the date of our next meeting is March 24th, 2025, and we would ask for a motion to adjourn. Gillis, motion to adjourn at 11:02. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day.